Good.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the presentation. There we go.
Tell me when.
You good, Allie?
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Compassion Arts Festival's Poetry Roundtable with Donald Vincent and Gretchen Primack. My name is Ellie Sardi, and I'm the founder of Compassion Arts. For those of you who are new to Compassion Arts, we are an arts and education initiative for compassionate living and animal advocacy. We host an annual Compassion Arts Festival every fall. The mission of the festival is to serve as a platform for sharing examples of some of the ways that creativity can be an instrument for holistic nonviolence and for cultivating compassion for all animals, including humans and the earth. We work to highlight the projects of artists and advocates who celebrate animals and that also raise awareness about the duality in our relationship with other species. We seek to inspire others, artists and non-artists alike, to use their creativity for deepening understanding, empathy, and respect for other animals, and to expand the circle of compassion for ahimsa peace for all. Tonight is the fourth event of our 2020 Compassion Arts Festival. You can learn all about our previous events and check out other festival presenters on our website, which is compassionartsfestival.org or compassionarts.org. Some of the people with videos on the website include presentations by Joanne Kong, performing arts piece by Michael Herron, a workshop by Camille DeAngelis, virtual sanctuary tour with Kathy Stevens, climate healers, Carol J. Adams, and an online art exhibit, Forget Me Not by Jane O'Hara, and a number of other visual artists, Isa Leshko, Susie Gonzalez, Cyrus Mejia, Joanne MacArthur, Janelle O'Rourke, L.A. Watson, Catherine Eddy, and many others. And some of our upcoming events include a roundtable discussion with the invisible vegan filmmaker, Jasmine Levia, which is tomorrow actually, a true story writing workshop with the TMI Project on Saturday, and an interview on Sunday with Sailesh Rao of Climate Healers, and also a roundtable on compassion fatigue next Tuesday night, as well as a virtual sanctuary tour the day before Thanksgiving. Tonight's event is a poetry reading and discussion program for exploring poetry as a tool for what I call speaking the voice unheard, and for revealing and deconstructing belief systems about which lives matter, who is caged and who is free, which lives are grievable, and how cultural and personal narratives are shaped and carried through generations and in society. Our poets, Donald Vincent and Gretchen Primack, are both artists who have done a number of presentations with Compassion Arts in the past, since 2016, and I am really honored to introduce them. Donald will be sharing from his recently released collection of poems, Convenient Amnesia and Other Works. Gretchen will be sharing from her most recent book titled Visiting Days, and her past works from her selection of poems titled Kind. So I'm first going to introduce Gretchen. I'm going to introduce everyone, and then I'm going to turn it over to them to have the event, and you'll enjoy hearing them much more than me speaking. About Gretchen. Gretchen Primack is a poet, educator, and a passionate advocate for the rights and welfare of both human and non-human animals. She's the author of 3 poetry collections, Visiting Days, Kind, and Doris Red Spaces, and a chapbook, The Slow Creaking of Planets. She co-wrote the book, The Lucky Ones, My Passionate Fight for Farm Animals, with Woodstock Farm Animal Sanctuary co-founder Jenny Brown. Her poetry has been featured in numerous journals, anthologies, and other publications that you can find on her website. Gretchen has taught and or administered with prison education programs, mostly college, since 2005. Her recent work, Visiting Days, is a collection of persona poems about invisible and discarded individuals who we do not see. Like with her poetry collection, Kind, which speaks as an impassioned voice of insight, compassion, and advocacy for animals, the narrative lens of Primack's poetry asks us to see the view through another's eyes. Gretchen has been a participant in Compassion Arts programs with Jane O'Hara, where she has performed readings of her poems in connection with O'Hara's artwork for presentations at Pace University in 2016 and at Symphony Space in New York City for the Compassion Arts and Culture and Animals Festival in 2017. Donald Vincent, also known as Mr. Hip, is a poet, educator, hip hop and spoken word artist, creator of the album Vegan Paradise, and founder of La Pamplemousse, a content development platform dedicated to spreading awareness about vegan companies. He is also the creator of That's So Vegan, a visual project merging creativity and education on plant-based foods and products with uplifting information on vegan lifestyles. His most recent work, Convenient Amnesia, published by Broadstone Books, is a poetry collection that illuminates the legacy of racism and violence, appropriation, disenfranchisement, and all those things we'd like to forget, ignore, or disown. Donald Vincent is a founding contributor in Compassion Arts and has been a featured presenter at past Compassion Arts Festival events, including Symphony Space in New York City, with the Compassion Arts and Culture and Animals Festival in 2017, Amazing Things Arts Center, 2018, and other programs. He's currently based in Los Angeles and is a professor of English composition at UCLA and literature at Emerson College. He recently completed working as the community outreach coordinator for PEN America, traveling throughout the country organizing press freedom advocacy events and programming. A past Culture and Animals Foundation grant honoree, he enjoys using storytelling as an instrument for change and awareness of advancing an understanding of justice and compassion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Donald and Gretchen.
Hey, Gretchen, it's a pleasure to be here with you today and share this space with you. I have my camera down so I can just maximize the bandwidth and hear everything and run everything smooth from the technical aspect. But Gretchen, I'm just gonna run the slides for you and let you do your thing.
What a pleasure to be with you all. And this whole fest, you know, it's about inspiring and supporting each other. And it's incredibly rich. And I've been thinking so much about the events I've already done, the Women in the Arts, seeing The Invisible Vegan last night. And my mind and heart are very full. The other night, the brilliant photographer, Joanne MacArthur, was talking about the way that we see things differently, the way that when she's looking at a captive animal, she is seeing that captive animal in a completely different way from all the other people around her witnessing this captive animal. And that is what it is like to be vegan in the world. It's also what it's like to be an artist in the world. So I think we have a lot to offer each other, thinking about these things, ways of seeing, the loneliness of seeing differently, the act of creating art out of that difference, and potentially even out of that loneliness. So Kind is a book that came out many years ago, but which is going to be republished, reissued by Lantern Books in the spring. And this is the new cover for that book, which I'm so excited about. This is the art of a vegan artist named Dana Ellen. The painting behind me is also by Dana Ellen. And inside the book will be art from Dana and also from Jane O'Hara, who we got to hear from the other night, and from Gus Mueller, who happens to be my husband, but total coincidence that his art is involved in this book. When we think about ways of seeing differently and thinking about animals differently, one animal that comes to mind for me right away is the fish. Perhaps the animal that is least talked about and thought about, even in our movement. This is a fish painted by Gus Mueller, my other half, my beloved, which will be in the book. And I realized that in the first incarnation of Kind, there was no poem about fish. I wrote about so many different kinds of animals and no fish. So one of the joys of a reissue is the ability to put new work in. And Lantern has graciously allowed me to add 10 new poems to this collection. And here's one of them. Let's start with the fish instead of ending with the fish. Because you are silver, because of your round eye and where it sits, because of your water home, your air distrust, because fins are frilled paper and not hands, because of your temperature, I can take your body, hook you up in a flail, net you up with 1,000 others, and no person will sigh for your life. The body made for its home, just as any body is. It's flashing silver, its cool fins and perfect eyes. Because our vaunted minds are too small to understand other minds, we will call you mindless and swallow you. Let me look that face in the eye and tell you, fish, I could no sooner eat your flesh than my own. I think another thing that vegan artists and vegans in general and struggle with in what we're doing is the impotence that we can feel against all of what goes on. And this is a poem about that. It's another new one for Kind. Even though we feel impotent, even though we can get overwhelmed at this battle that we are waging, we continue, we make art, right? We do what we need to do. We use our activism, we use our hearts. This poem begins, the title is from a poem by Gerald Stern. So the first line of one of his poems is, when I got there, the dead opossum looked like. So I use that as a jumping off point, and here's this poem. When I got there, the dead opossum looked like a sleeping prince. He didn't want a majestic burial, as majestic burials are inane. He wanted his family back. He wanted to live, but we wouldn't let him. There were sweets to buy, and his route crossed ours, so we crossed him out. Nothing we could do then, and still some middle-aged lady gathered him in her arms and keened, cold nose in her ear. Keening is inane. His family wanted him, but there were ribs to buy and manifest destiny. I pressed my cheek to his cheek. Stupid. I pressed his head to my heart. Dumb. So Donald and I are both going to read Thanksgiving poems. I don't have a turkey image, but we will let another bird who would definitely be friends with the turkey in this poem stand in for her. This is a Dana Ellen painting. I am so sorry that I neglected to say the last painting was by the magnificent Jane O'Hara, and that will be in the book. So here's a poem called Thanksgiving. And maybe you've heard the old chestnut about how turkeys are so stupid that if they'll drown in the rain. They don't know how to drown. They don't know how to, live through a rainstorm, which is, well, it's just absurd. Okay, Thanksgiving. If she tips her face into rain, she pulls it back down and tucks towards shelter. If she's earned her place, her seeds, the tough bird will take them and snap for them. Her body is not dry or stuffed, not carved, not left over. It courses with systems, one that circulates, sending blood with its sugar and air. One system that reproduces, composing shell, cell by cool cell, pushing out a life to wrap in a wing in weather. And one system that shoots currents nerve to nerve, shivers of pleasure in seeds and heat and children, an alarm when an arm reaches for her body to make her body something carved, something left over. I wonder how many of you get frustrated when you hear somebody talk about humane meat, humane dairy, humane eggs, as if there's some way for this to be humane. We all understand that factory farming is the worst, but it's like saying beating someone really hard is bad. Beating somebody a little bit, well, these are justifications. These are, rationalizations. So I wanted to write about that. So I have two very short poems, Humane 1 and Humane 2. And they are both persona poems. They are in the voices of someone. You can imagine any animal that you want, but here's an image from Jane O'Hara. Humane 1. I know a knife when I see one. I want my throat whole. What could I barter for myself? There is grass here. Still, I want my throat. There is the rope, the winch. I want my life like life does. It isn't yours. Humane 2. To kill me quietly, to kill me swiftly, the strongest bolt gun, the cleanest floor, the sharpest knife is violence, and fear will trap in every cell of myself. I have 3 more, and the next 2 are from a different book, Visiting Days. This came out just last year, and I was talking electronically to the novelist Deb Olin Unferth. And if you can see, this is her new novel. It's called Barn 8. And it is amazing. And every single person who has their eyeballs on this book right now wants to read this book, I promise. Here's her name, Deb Olin Unferth. The novel is Barn 8. She's a vegan novelist. We need more of those. And she wrote a very, very beautiful novel. The thing is, she also works in prisons. And we were talking about electronically the fact that these things are connected, right? And so I thought I would read a poem in her honor and also one from this book called The Caged, which makes this connection between issues of incarceration and mass incarceration and issues of veganism and factory farming. The Caged. The chickens stuffed 10 to 1. The felons. The beagles stuffed with drain clearer. The pot dealers, the pot smokers. The calves chained neck to door. The transports chained wrist to ankle. The turkeys in fall. The no, I didn't. The bait dogs, the dog fighters, the breeding sows, the egg layers, the murderers, the convicted innocents, the convicted, the innocents. As Ellie said, most of the poems in this book are persona poems. They're written in the voices of imaginary men in an imaginary prison. I've worked for a very long time with incarcerated men, and a lot of my friends are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, and they were my mentors and first readers for this book. But I have a very special relationship with one of the men that I knew, and his name is Intelligent Allah. He went vegan in prison. He was in prison for 19 years. So most of the time he was vegan in that environment, which I can tell you is incredibly, incredibly hard. And he inspired this poem. So this is in the voice of a man named Knowledge. He's not intelligent. Intelligent is intelligent and can speak for himself. So this is somebody who's inspired by my friend Intelligent. Knowledge. I honor life by not taking it anymore. Not a fish's life, not a calf's, no one's brother or child. I did violence. I put it between my teeth and it formed my blood, and I took blood. Now I eat what they ate in Eden before violence. Now I ask forgiveness for the life I've taken that wasn't mine to take. The man and the calves and fishes, the chicks and their mothers. The cops laugh. Their work is domination. They lord over, and some men on the block call themselves kings. But I am done with that in every soul of me and every body. All right, I'm going to end with a new poem called COVID. Here's another Jane O'Hara. I want to thank Ellie and Donald before I stop. And I also want to do a shout out. Can you see my sweatshirt? See what it says? Because I believe this. The future is vegan. You can get one of these through Rebel, R-E-B-L. Incredible little clothing company out in Colorado. And we got to just keep that faith, people, animals. So here's one that talks a little bit about our current situation. It's called COVID 1. There's 2 COVID poems in the new reissue of Kind. And I'll end with this one, COVID 1. This year, spring and summer decided to go on without us. To roll in the fields while we rolled in poison. The glory, the relaxed breaths of it. They pressed against each other, not a reed fit between. Spring and summer made us wait while the birds built and snakes sunned and crocs snapped at their frogs. The air milded and cleared far from our sick beds because of our sick beds. Oh, human, see, you are important. Biology, hubris, apocalypse, cages, carbon, energy. You are important, just not the way you think, just not the way you wish. Thanks.
Oh my goodness. Gretchen, that was so beautiful. I'm just over here so excited. I wish I would have, read my fish poem. I have a fish poem as well. I love writing poetry about art, which is ekphrastic poetry. And it's even a joy to just see your ekphrastic poetry and hear how some of the themes are very similar. And I think words and language are what brings us together as people. And so, thinking about different, discourse is very much needed. And I think especially in the arts. So I truly did enjoy that. I even loved how when you started one of the poems, the dogs were like, hey, we like this. This is our favorite poem. And I heard the dogs barking in the background. And I was like, yeah, I need to get me a BFF so, they can be my own personal hype man or hype beast kind of, and then the work that you do within the prisons, I think that's very important. I remember before I moved to LA, New York was trying to they were trying to ban books in some of the New York prisons, and Pen America and a couple of other organizations really stood up to make sure prisoners have that right to read and educate themselves. And so when I hear about people who educate and teach within the prison system, me, myself, I think that it's very fulfilling. And I think that, our world will definitely be a better place with people like you. And so, I just wanted to say thank you for your work in that area. And then, the idea of vegan diets in prison and what those mean for, I think some of the people who look at veganism as a diet and not sort of like the ethical values that go behind. And so how that was recently approved in some prisons as a respected diet. So, I think that's amazing. And so we'll talk a little bit more about vegan diets and food when we get to the Q&A, because I see you're a chef yourself, but being a vegan, I guess we all are. So I'm going to start my poems off reading Lucky Charm. Lucky Charm is the opening poem in Convenient Amnesia. And let's just say this copy that I'm reading from, the best question that pops up in the Q&A will receive a signed copy of Convenient Amnesia. So if you haven't asked me or Gretchen any questions about our work, now or later will be the time to do so. So Lucky Charm. Cool. Before I read my poem, I do want to give you all some background on me. I love cooking. And so I'm just going to show this little clip of me making a vegan pizza recently with a stand-up comedian. Welcome to That's So Vegan. We have another installment of our childhood favorite meals. Today we're going to be talking to an extremely talented comedian. I met this gentleman at the Bronson Bar one day. With no further ado, can we introduce Mr. Dave Heller, please? On my plate, the diet plan. So I'll make sure you get access to the link after the poems in the Q&A. But I do want to say Chicago people really love deep dish pizza. Lucky Charm. I inherited the bop in my walk from my great-great-grandpa's lashings on the farm. So in Whole Foods, I divide aisles, a modern Moses parting white seas. You've been warned by my charm. I crush worlds like Godzilla, false alarm, keep calm for I won't cause harm. People scramble to dodge me, the monster with the third arm. On trains, they sneak peeks, look away and look again at my charm, which is like Uncle Tom, too uncool to take home to moms. So in cars, clubs, and in bathrooms, we get it on because of my charm. Hello, you remind me of a fellow by the name of Othello. And if loving you is right, I've been wrong all along, charm. The take me by the hand because you want to dance, charm. Others clear throats on elevators. Then, are you an entertainer? Questions swarm while quickly clutching their pocketbooks. I smile when they look and give them a buck for the hell of it, charm. The once you've been charmed, you never go back, charm. Staying true to my native land, but love to slang the English language, charm. February 1st should be Give a Thug a Hug Day, sipping Hennessy and Remy Martin, charm. Prankster and intelligent gangster all in one. No 40 acre and a mule, but it's all good. I still think we should occupy the hood, charm. Don't stop with the boogie down hip hop music and your McDonald's commercial, charm. The militant yet guilty until proven innocent. So shh, be quiet. Can't snitch about my kind of charm. The ones who know won't tell, and the ones who tell don't know. Can't look away from it like a soap opera. All my children raised themselves charm. You knew about it, but forgot like last week's newspaper headline. I want to whistle whimsical feelings to white women. Emmett Till's charm. The charm that shines is the charm that blinds.
I want you to know that I'm a ragged foot ride. Oh, but like and living like you people, that's why. Old house stays every day for my board. That's more than all you rounders in this town can afford. I'm a mighty good man to have hanging around. I'm tailor-made, I'm not a hand-me-down. I'm an eagle, I'm a mason, I'm a elk, I'm a knight. I'm ready for the ride. You hear me talking? I'm ready for the ride.
Phobogenic object. They built me to be filthy, black and ugly and forever guilty. Upon the white gaze, dialect is created between my body and the world. Feel a one-way conversation, the crushing weight of melanin. White is worldly, black as sin. So this next poem is about my main man, Ferris, here that you see on the screen. Me and my partner decided to rescue a turkey on Thanksgiving because why? Turkeys are sentient beings and they deserve to live their best lives. So when she asked me, I was like, yeah, I'd love to. Where are we adopting a turkey from? And she says, Farm Sanctuary. And I says, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. She says, what's wrong, Donald? I said, you know what? I love Farm Sanctuary. I met Gene Bauer once. Gene Bauer is like the coolest dude. I met him at a reading, got his book. I was like, oh, this guy's great. And then about maybe 6 months later, I did a reading at a boarding school in Massachusetts. And when I told the students, that I was vegan, they were like, oh my gosh, we love veganism. And I'm like, really? Because it caught me off guard. This is before being vegan was kind of trendy and things of that nature. And so I'm like, y'all really love veganism? And the teacher at the time had told me Gene Bauer had spoke at the school the month before. And I was like, man, Gene's getting everybody riled up about that veganism stuff, So, I really enjoy Farm Sanctuary. But this next poem is about me driving throughout Massachusetts and running across just like wild turkeys, living their very best life, but also holding up traffic. Where do the turkeys go? Forever lie about everything, but ask yourself, where do the turkeys go? November, no. Body knows. Does someone come and tuck them into grass beds of the nocturnal darkness? I hear domesticated turkeys are too fat to fly, but those wild things can soar higher than a thick branch sycamore. Why would I ask a stupid question like that? Do the fish disappear from a dissipated ocean, causing commotion, a tainted bait? Do the cows moo, chew, and accrue a construed purpose without the interference of human deposition? Does the pig understand what is bacon, pork, ham? I almost purchased a bumper sticker that said, I break for turkeys. After an almost accident, waiting for the turkeys that roam freely to cross the Brookline, Massachusetts streets, those free from being considered meat. During the holiday feasting time, my friends of flight could not be found. On Black Friday, I circled my usual commute, hoping to see my pardoned patrons of the urban woods. Astonished, my mortality made sense. These winged beasts are less food than they are friends. Humorous as a funny bone, I asked again, where do the turkeys go? Laughing for a wishbone, these birds of flight found refuge in the neighbor's home. I thought it was cool as hell that those the neighbor took in the turkeys. You know, I got out the street, and I'm a black man, so I can't really be walking around Brookline, Massachusetts in the middle of the night looking for turkeys. I think that raises a lot of red flags. But the house at the corner actually said that he bought the turkeys in because of, you know, natural predators like coyotes and things of that nature that would harm the turkeys. And I was just like, yo, bless your heart, guy. So this next poem, my last poem, is titled Zoom Funeral or Is It the News? I teach at UCLA, and my students just always mention, you know, what's going on in the news, but also mention how much they hate Zoom because they're on it so much. So this is for them. This is for COVID. This is for everybody who has found the light. Zoom funeral or is it the news? You are on mute, nestled in front of the computer screen, filled with boxes of blank ivory faces. This is the usual, though. You present on alternative assessments for students during a pandemic. Nonchalantly, you say, I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, but traditional grading is a form of colonization and white supremacy. She privately messages you that she is not offended, but how is the grading system related to white supremacy? You tell yourself you knew you shouldn't have said anything, that people don't want the truth, but prefer to live in fantasy world of disillusionment. Either way, you email her links on pedagogy and approaches to teaching English composition to international and multicultural students. And because you're always the lone token representative for Blackness, you're scheduled to fight the power and discuss those equity inclusion essays and articles constantly doing the work for whiteness. 1. The pandemic is killing Black people. The police are still at it too. So you say, fuck it, and break the stay-at-home orders to visit a friend to disappear from the madness. Her love language is food, and it is so comforting. You forget about the burden that Blackness carries in this world, at least for a second, maybe a minute or more. At 7:05, a wireless emergency alert blares from the cell phone. The city of Los Angeles is declaring curfew at 8 p.m. because of protests. Your friend says you can stay the night at her home. She wants you to be safe. For a second, you think about it, but you remember you have work to prepare for, even though it's a Saturday. However, you consider staying, and your non-Black partner is less frightened. As dinner is being plated, you hear a familiar chirp, chirp. The neighbors above peek over the balcony and quickly dip away. Your Blackness reminds them to lock their doors, even in a secured and gated complex, too. He calls you to check in and make sure you're safe. Thanks you for watching the Hidden Figures movies with his kids because their mother and stepdad blind them to the coloring obstacles Blackness faces. You say no problem, but are hesitant to hang up the phone. But you're tired of these calls at this point. Bet you're happy you aren't working for the man anymore, he says. You concur. When he asks how you're holding up, you say you're grateful to be employed and still teaching. He asks where. When you tell him, he says, you're so articulate and you can't help but to feel helpless. So you hang up. 4. You are driving down the highway and cop cars are in a single file at the exit. It is your birthday. Your grandmother calls you to check in. The presidents of the news made her forget it's your birthday, but she's your grandmother, so you shoot the shit. She says, did you see that white woman calling the police on Black man watching birds? She got what was coming to her. You can't be caught on camera Caucasianing and being racist. You giggle and say, yeah, but the situation could have went left, like you've seen so many times that the sensitization is desensitized. She says, thank God he stepped in and helped that man. And you say, but where was God when a cop killed a man kneeling on his neck? She asks, well, what did he do? And you said, nothing, but take it back because he did do something. You tell her it was an incident of BWB, breathing while black. Ask her again, where was God? She says, I don't know. I have the faintest idea. I'll have to look up what the scripture says. This is my last one from this section, and then we'll jump into the Q&As with Gretchen. I like that little freestyle rhyme there. Session, Gretchen, that little snap. Woo-hoo. Gretchen, you can borrow that. You're sitting in your home alone, no computer, no social media, and another wireless alert goes off. Another curfew is in place for 8 p.m. tonight. You throw a fist in the air for the virtual revolution. Another blare from the cell phone tells you that curfew has been moved to 6 p.m. You throw 2 fists in the air because the settlement is burning and liberation is around the corner. Your previous student emails you that she donated money on behalf of your class and thanks you for providing a space to learn and talk about the ills of hate towards Blackness. You cry a bit. You really do cry because retrospective justice isn't as useless as you previously believed. Thank you all. Cool. I am back. I see we got the chat popping off. If y'all got questions, y'all can put them in the Q&A box. That'll help us out greatly on this end. Shout outs to all the 27 participants here today. Y'all are here to hear poetry on a Thursday evening. Y'all are amazing. I'm, 10 minutes on my side of the country, Thursday night football comes to it. So, thank you, Evelyn Kimber. Thank you, Maria P. But yeah, so I'll try to sift through some of the questions in the Q&A, but I'll just start this off if that's okay with you, Gretchen. One of the questions that I'd like to pose is, how has your creative process changed since COVID?
Well, it's interesting. There's a group of people who all did an artist residency at the same place at different times, but who decided to do a Friday afternoon COVID writing session. And this is a fun idea for any writers out there, for you, Donald, and such, where you just get together at the beginning and you all say, okay, so I think I might work on this. And then you just turn the video off and go off for an hour and a half. And then you come back together and you say, oh, that went well, or whatever, I didn't get anything done, but there's something about it that just makes you create. And a lot of the new poems for Kind, the reissue, came from that. So that's one fun thing that has come out of this. And I've also started to write every morning. There just doesn't feel to be as much kind of torque on the day. So I'm starting to be one of those people who can actually pick up a pen on a daily basis in the morning, which I've never been that person. What about you?
My creative process has been, I think for me, it differs because of the different fields that I'm writing in, for personal reasons and for work. I think for my creative process since COVID, I have had a great kind of, thought process and curating what I want to work on for, once we return back to the normal. But I think waking up in the morning, I've shifted to actually what you just said, using a pen to write down things, because I spend so much time on the digital front, like social media, or just spending so much time on the Zoom. If I'm not on Zoom, I'm preparing to be on Zoom. So being able to step away from the keyboard and type in, things that I'm working on. I filled up 2 notebooks already, actually, just by writing by hand. And so,
Wow.
Really wake up in the morning, try to get into that routine. I've been drinking a jasmine kind of green tea every morning, which has been lovely. So an alternative form of caffeine presented in green tea, but nonetheless. But yeah, it's so great to hear about your creative process. If anybody in the audience has questions, again, please don't hesitate to throw those in the Q&A. But your Humane series poems, they're like so chilling. I think when I read them on paper and then also when I hear you read them, and it's because of the strong like visual impact that your words leave. And I noticed that one of your poems had the note from Adrian Rich. So I just wanted to know who currently is your inspiration and whose work do you admire?
I've been I'm going to shout out a poetry festival. It's every other year called Split This Rock, which anybody out there who's interested in social justice meeting art, right, which is the compassion arts, way of being, and so many other ways of being, I really recommend it. And it's really the work that inspires me a lot of the time is work that has some sort of message, that is doing some sort of consciousness raising. I'm not very interested in poems that are about, staring at your navel. I've just never responded a lot to that. I like badass poets, and in Kind, a lot of the poems have, like you mentioned, they have epigraphs, they have little quotes, and that there was that one which I didn't read, but for for Thanksgiving was an Adrian Rich quote. But other Edna St. Vincent Millay is a total badass poet who I love so much and a real activist. And there's a quote from her in there. There's a Whitman quote. There's Stanley Kunitz. Other just really thoughtful and kind of non-navel gazy poets who I love. Lucille Clifton. There's a contemporary poet named Tim Siebels who I love. So I would say poets who are really thinking outwardly rather than inwardly. And it's not to say that there can't be art that's just about aesthetics and beauty, and that can be great too. But I'm really drawn towards ones that are trying to make change.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love all of those poets that you named, and the same Malloy, just thinking about how the modern poets, had that conversation and created a lot of the platform that we as poets use today. I think that, some of the best poets or poetry pays homage to the language that came before. And I love Lucille Clifton. I have a weird story about Lucille, but I would go to the Grolier Poetry Bookshop in Cambridge, Massachusetts, one of the few poetry bookshops in the country. And I, broke graduate student working my way through school, and I found a Lucille Clifton book, and it was in the used area, so it was $5, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all I have is said this is perfect. And I go to the register, they ring it up, it says $5 or $10, and then $5, and then they go, oh, actually this is 50 because it's a signed edition. And then I go, I don't have that much money. And the bookseller at the time tells me that's quite okay. We'll take what you have. And so they gave me the book for $10, and I still have that book today. And so, I really love Lucille Clifton's work. It's something that I'll keep hopefully keep in my future lineage. But Gretchen, we have a question in the chat box from Michael Heron, and then we're going to follow up the question from Mary Beth, and then we're going to answer Bobby's question, and then I'll return to the questions that I had prepared for you. Michael Heron says, Gretchen and Donald, you both seem to have passion about justice for animals and for humans. I would love to know which came first for each of you and how one informs the other. Gretchen, would you like to take that first, or I can jump on that if you'd like?
Yeah, go for it.
Michael, I think my passion for humanity as a whole came first before it was even compassion for or passion for humans and animals. I think my passion for like the not the spiritual essence in the world, but just the idea of humanity and the purpose of us being on this planet. I think that's what drove me to it. But through veganism, I have grown and, enjoyed expanding my, compassion for all people. And I think that that's the thing about difference and discourse, is that you need to be able to have compassion to inform others across difference and be able to meet on that middle ground, and better understand people who don't think like us and don't look like us and don't value some of the same things. And so I got through that through vegans, because, even during some of the work that we would do for some of the protests when I first went vegan and learning more about the animals, we were doing a circus event, and they're like, "Hey, Donald, you want to get in the cage?" And I'm like, "Hey, we can't have the only Black guy in the cage." And so really informing vegans about speciesism in those platforms helped me develop compassion towards humans. But I think I've always had that compassion to animals. I used to be afraid of animals, like dogs and things of that nature. But ever since going vegan, I'm like, the dog whisperer. So all animals kind of love me and are attracted to me. But that's just, I think, because my energy radiates that. But Gretchen, would you like to jump on that question?
Yeah, I think it was always all bundled together. I definitely always was extremely drawn to animals and also drawn to issues around people. And, I went vegetarian when I was 13. And so all along, and then, I had to get schooled about dairy and eggs. So, that took me much longer. But yeah, I think it's always been all the same thing somehow. You shouldn't oppress others. You shouldn't, I remember being extremely attuned toward issues around Indigenous people when I was very, very young, and also trying to save a bee's life when somebody swatted this bee with a towel when I was, 8 or something. So I think I guess it's just always all been there.
Yeah, that's. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say that was a great response. Did you want to continue at all?
No, I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure that this question for you, because you didn't mention that there's one for you.
Oh, I see it from Bobby. What's your next steps when COVID is done? I'll answer that one first. My next steps, ideally, I think once the summertime comes next year, I'd love to move to France. I'm thinking of doing the living remote, working remote. I think what COVID is shown that workers are very employable, even in flexible workspaces and working remote jobs at this point. And so I think that's what's next for me. Got to get my partner on board. So if y'all can send her a DM and say, go to France with Mr. Hip, that would be appreciated. Second question, does teaching at universities like UCLA also influence your poetry? I think that living my life influences poetry, and work is of course a part of that. I think that I learn a lot from my students. Bobby's actually one of my students, or previous students, but I learn a lot from my students and their perspective on the world, which helps me engage and kind of shift how I approach my daily life. And so working at universities like UCLA, UCLA is an institution, and so when you think about the power that institutions hold, I'm still in that system. And so you're able to see how institutions work within the higher education platform, as you see in many different facets of our way of life here in the country. But I do appreciate my time, and I appreciate that opportunity to be able to teach, because again, I learn from my students just as much as I teach them, hopefully. And so thank you for that question, Bobby. Mary Beth Holman says, how do you handle finding places for your work and dealing with resistance from publishers towards veganism and animal rights?
Well, boy, aren't we lucky to have Lantern Books, which is all about vegan and animal rights and others. So one way is to reach out to, I mean, in this case, they approached me, which is like one of the honors of my life, but like finding places that are tuned to that. But see, for Mary Beth, I mean, it's like, it's an issue, right? People who aren't getting it. I think they're getting a little more now, right? I think places are starting to get it. I feel lucky in that I don't have to publish as part of my work as often as a lot of people who are in academia, and they've really got to be publishing. And so there's a lot of pressure on that and on it happening frequently. But I guess reaching out to places that I already know that you already know are like-minded is helpful, and just trying to get a beat on that. What do you think, Donald?
I'm in full agreement with you, Gretchen. I think that it's not only finding those presses that are open to it, but also just shooting your shot and, just trying. With my book, because of the topic about race, I sent that out to a bunch of different publishers, and a few responded back to me in a great fashion. But I decided to go with my actual publisher because of his honesty, which was, hey, when I first read this, I didn't think it was right for the press. But then when I revisited, I said, yes, the press needs this. And so,
Okay.
your work can be that game changer, and you never know what or who your work can influence and change. And so I wouldn't even worry about that. But I do think that question leads into a great question from Jane O'Hara, which is, she says, both of you are completely amazing. Oh my gosh, thank you, Jane. We all both love your work.
Yeah.
This is not a very creative oriented question, but how do you get your work out there, especially beyond preaching to the choir?
I had a thought. I just want to finish because, yeah, let me just go back to that last question for a minute, because your answer was so apt in that we've got, for Mary Beth and for us and for everybody on this, we have to keep reaching out. It's like, my answer was like, oh, keep going back to the places that are into it. No, we should actually be doing what you're saying, which is put out anyway, because the people with their eyeballs on it, give them a chance to do the right thing. And I will say Barn 8, which I'll go back to, this novel, which is a vegan novel, is published by Grey Wolf. And Grey Wolf is not a vegan press. I've never seen something Grey Wolf, but they were like, this is a great book, and we're going to publish it. So that's inspiration for that. In terms of the great Jane O'Hara, you want to take that one, Donald?
Yeah, how do you get your work out there, especially beyond preaching the choir? I think that some folks just, I think it's not about getting it out there. I think it's about why we as artists, why we as creatives do the work that we do. Now, I could write a million poems in my lifetime that will never be read by anyone. But I think the fulfillment of continuing and appreciating my craft, and when people see the consistency and the love of the work that I am doing, because I'm not writing or creating because I want Joe Schmo to do this. And I think it varies for visual artists, because sometimes you might have to create something for a particular gallery or theme with a particular art space. But I think for, just me as a writer, I think I write for myself. I'm my primary audience, and it comes later. I think that gratification comes later. Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but last week, I was actually just minding my business, down in the dumps about art, not reaching the people it's supposed to. And then I get a post on Instagram of a complete stranger playing the recipe, highlighting whatever meal he was eating at the time. And, for me, that gratification is awesome. Like, I love that, because I don't know that person, but not only is that person in supporting me, but whoever watches that story will hear that song and might be, oh, like, whatever you can eat, I can make it vegan. Like, that's amazing. Like, I didn't know that. And, you know, that might influence them. So I think it starts with just being true to yourself and being true to the work that you do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's so true. You don't know who and what and where. It's you know, really just methodically getting out there and doing your thing, and just hoping that it reaches beyond this idea of preaching to the choir. People come out who aren't vegan or who aren't interested in incarceration issues. You know, people come out, and if you have that integrity in the making of it such that it's strong work, they will be moved by it, and they might tell somebody, and they might tell somebody, and we have to just believe that that happens, and it does happen. When I was reading for visiting days, I was reading at UC Santa Cruz, and so all the people who would come there were coming because they thought that it was around prison issues and mass incarceration issues and poetry. And I snuck some poems from Kind in there, you know, a poem about dairy. I snuck it in there. And I'll tell you, they were as responsive to that as they were to the prison poems. And I even said, like, I know this isn't comfortable. I'm not comfortable sharing it. I would love to not have to share it. But this is our reality, you know? So we have to just keep doing it. Another thing, when I was touring with Kind, I was at a bookstore in Milwaukee where I lived for a few years. This was years later. And there was a high school student who just came because she had to like write about a reading for her high school paper. She ended up taking poems from Kind and bringing them to like the national forensic competition where you're, you know, like where you're orating. She was like orating these poems in like a huge hall in Florida. I mean, what? You know, but so you really don't know, and you just have to get the hell out there, you know?
Yeah, that was amazing. I love when work just spreads like that. Everyone, it's 5:30, so we've reached our time, but we do have I think one or two questions left. So we'll be chatty patties about these last few questions. Again, if you want to sneak some questions in to the Q&A, please don't hesitate. And thank you, Larry, for coming. I see my publisher is in the house, so shout outs to Larry, always being doll and supporting me. Maria Pinto says, how do you cope with people who just don't get it?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. Do you have thoughts?
Nah, I think it goes back to just doing what you believe is right, and sticking true to your art. I love when people say, you know, some people aren't gonna be as open to talking about race when they read your book, and I'm gonna say they're losing out or they're missing out. But then you have folks that actually do the work, that look up stuff, that watch films. I think Michael Herron is a great example of that, because I'll post something about the world and he'll be like, yeah, I saw this on a film the other day. Like, this is completely true. And so I guess, like, long kind of winded answer, I do think that it's important to just stick to yourself and stick true to what you're good at, which is creating.
I mean, is there any reason to say anything beyond that? I mean, here.
And so I guess there's no more questions. I just want to say thank you, Ellie, for putting together the Compassion Arts Festival. I was, you know, enamored by the presentations, the films. The Women and Artists event was amazing. I learned so much about the art community and how activism and arts are at the forefront of the change that we'll see in our future. And just thank you for putting together these events, because you're a doll and you're a joy.
Oh,
And everyone, I know
you guys
Ellie
are amazing.
is
So thank you so much for your amazing work.
It's so important that we all of us, the attendees and the artists, and a lot of the attendees are artists, you know, but that we're all doing this for each other. And Ellie, you're giving us a way to do that. And it's incredibly important and really moving and really inspiring and valuable.
Oh, thank you. You guys are you're the ones that are making it happen. I mean, it's my honor, and I'm, you know, how happy am I? I get to like every night, like sit back and listen and to all these amazing presentations. You know, I'm in heaven. So thank you so much.
Well, let's all do it again sometime.
Oh, soon. Maybe once a month after the new year.
Good idea.
All righty. Ellie, I'll let you lead the forefront on that one. All right, cool. It's been a pleasure, Gretchen. I think just listening to your work. Thank you for gracing me with the way you read, your control over the language. I think that again, this moment will be probably my highlight for 2020. So I'm appreciative, and I hope y'all both have a great day. Oh, yes. So enjoy y'all evening.